Welcome to Late Night Cram. So, Late Night Cram, paper 3, the end, the final one, the biggie, the Germany, the one that, let's be honest, is pretty much all the other questions that you've done before already. So, this one should be pretty damn straightforward. So, first things first, a couple of quick pointers. Easy wins. The first and really obvious easy win is just to read the questions, people. You need to do this. Every year, particularly on the paper 3, people, let's be frank, balls this one up because of the fact they just don't read the questions. The usual rule, don't panic. Just stay calm. Think about what you are writing. Think about the importance of the points you're trying to get across, and remember, for the love of chocolate biscuits, you need to focus on why, not how. The paper's fairly straightforward, as well we know. Question 1 is an absolute blinder of a gimme. It's just 2 inferences. The inference has to come from the picture, people. Every year, people will screw this up by making an inference based on the spiel, the rubric, the bit of information that they give you at the top. Don't. Use that to help inform what you're going to be thinking about, but make sure the inference comes from the source itself, the picture, or if you're unlucky, or possibly lucky, depending on your outlook, the piece of text that they give you. Remember, an inference is an educated guess. It's straightforward. You're looking for something in the picture that leads you to come to a conclusion about what this might mean. And make sure it relates to the question they ask. Question 2, explain why. Easy peasy. We've been doing these. We've done these in paper 1. We've done these now in paper 2. Paper 3, explain why. We know what we need. 3 points, 3 paragraphs. Name it, describe it, explain it. Boom, job done. The source questions, again, we've done this before. It's paper 1. We don't talk about why it's not useful. We just focus on the useful pointers. Remember, you need to talk about what's in that source. You need to talk about its provenance, the bit of information they give you at top. Why are they both useful? How do we assess utility? Well, we can only assess how useful it is by gauging it against our own knowledge. Which brings us to the bit where it all tends to go downhill. Question 3, ABCD. It's straightforward. It's easy. You're looking for 2 differences. That's easy enough. You can do that. Nothing to worry about on question 3B. What are the 2 differences between the interpretations? They will give you the pointer as to where they want you to go with the question. You've just got to spot the difference and show it by quoting. Always, always make sure that when we're doing 3B and 3C, that we are looking for quotes to back us up. 3D, why are they different? Wow, 3C, why are they different? Easy to do. Not a problem. Remember, mix and match. Which source goes with which interpretation? Now, they might not be bleedingly obvious. They do this. They love to do this. So you have to think outside the box. If it's the case that the interpretation is positive and the source is fairly positive, they probably go together. If it's the case, like in last year's paper, which really threw people, and it didn't need to, that the source is talking largely about things that come up in another way, then all you have to do is look at the interpretation and see if it's talking about it. So if it's talking about positive aspects of culture and the source is talking about positive aspects of culture, then the 2 are probably linked. And so on and such forth. Just a pointer, Weimar culture won't come up as the biggie questions. 3D is the one where people make a mash of it because they think it's very different. It isn't, and it is. Which really is probably about as much help as I've ever given you. But let's listen, let's have a think. So, 3D is merely our old friend, the how far do you agree? And we know that the first thing you've got to do, you've got to say whether or not you agree. The difference with the Germany paper 3 to say the how far do you agree that we found in the Henry paper and that we found in the Cram paper is that unlike these two instances where they give you the stimulus points on the paper, and remember they'll give you 2 and ask for a third of your own, here they are going to ask you whether or not you agree with interpretation 1 or interpretation 2. That's stimulus point 1. Logically, stimulus point 2 has to be the other interpretation. The third aspect is your own knowledge. So you know you need to talk about whether or not you agree with the interpretation they want you to agree or disagree with. You know then you must bring in the other interpretation, because the other interpretation is a contrasting interpretation. It's there for balance. Use it to balance your answer. And then the final part is to bring in that wider own knowledge that you have to really answer that question. It's about extent. A top band answer will be talking about the extent to which you agree and illustrating it. So you may well want to point out that there are parts of the interpretation, 1, that you really agree with, but there are other parts that you would question on the basis of what you've learned. The same would be true for interpretation 2. There will also be a whole gamut of other things that you can bring to the party that aren't in the interpretations. That's your third point, your third paragraph. So, a couple of quick things. Obviously, it's harder to gauge this one because question 3 is focused on one topic that they choose. We haven't got the breadth necessarily that we would have had in paper 1 or paper 2 here. This is narrow, this is specific, this is a question of have you revised everything to a point where you can talk about it. Is it the case that you really, really know your onions? Final easy win. For the love of everything holy, including jumpers, socks and quilts, you must remember that anything that comes up, unless it is talking about the foundation of the early Nazi Party or specifically to do with Hitler, anything before 1933 does not need to have reference to Hitler. Hitler is not important in the grand scheme of things unless we are talking about the early Nazi Party or specifically to do with Hitler. The exception would be if you were talking about events of 23 where you can bring in the beer hall putsch. Otherwise, Hitler has nothing to do with Weimar. Conversely, anything after 33, if it's on Nazis, you do not need to talk about Hitler's early career pre-1933. So if it is talking about how the Nazis kept control after they come to power, there is no point talking about things that happened before 1933. They've already won elections, so there is no point talking about elections. There is no point talking about the weaknesses of the Weimar Republic. All of this is irrelevant. Cut to the focus point. So, before 33, don't talk about Hitler, unless it tells you to. After 33, Don't talk about Weimar or the rise of the Nazis unless it tells you to. Otherwise, it's a question of going in there, looking the beast dead in the eye, and giving it your best shot. Remember, you can use the sources in the paper to help you out with your answer in question 3D. And if you're really lucky and they relate to question 2. But do not explicitly quote from those sources or reference them explicitly in your answer. Merely use them as a crib. Use them as a crutch to help you bring back more information that you've learned about. Ultimately, go in there, have fun. Remember your timings. Remember that this paper is its own little entity. It's not any of the previous two. It's its own shot. Remember that you have already done 30% with paper 1. This is the final 30% of a paper. 70% is done. It's in the bag. This is the last 30%. Whatever has happened before now, in terms of how well or how badly you think you've done, this is a third of the GCSE. You can make it or break it on this paper and one other. It will be fine. Stay calm. Remember to Doro. Remember to plan. Good luck. You have no idea how much I am rooting you on. I believe in you all. You can do this.